Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2017 Skoll Awards for Social Entrepreneurship. A warm, warm welcome to those of you who are here for the very first time. Those of you veterans know that this is the moment when we gather to celebrate the women, men, and organizations putting themselves on the line for change. Societies in our world are always changing in subtle and insignificant ways. Still, every once in a while, change seems to erupt without warning. I remember my first earthquake as if it were yesterday. In 1971, a magnitude 6.7 earthquake hit Southern California. We lived in the San Gabriel Mountains east of Los Angeles and were jolted awake at 6:01 a.m. The shaking was terrifying, and it seemed to go on forever. Buildings toppled, highways buckled, a hospital collapsed, and people lost their lives. And for weeks afterwards, for months, aftershocks continued to roll through the area, and every time I felt I was in the vise of fear. We come together tonight as a community grappling with what feels like earth-shattering change. Not the kind set off when two tectonic plates collide miles underground, but change ignited beneath the surface of human society. In reality, the political ruptures of the past year did not come without warning. They came as the result of pressures building along faults of inequality for decades. We don't need to get very far into Thomas Piketty or to not understand what Winnie explained so eloquently yesterday, that the fact that the richest 1% or 0.0001% control an ever-expanding percentage of wealth, while middle and lower income populations in the North have experienced stagnation or decline, is not a recipe for sustainability. And while millions have lifted themselves out of poverty, yes, the World Bank has been doing its job. There are still too many millions born into poor communities in poor countries who never even get to feel things are getting worse. Instead, they are left to battle the structural violence of poverty, starvation, and disease. If there were a Richter scale to measure the buildup of societal pressure, the needle would long ago have hit the danger zone. Both Brexit and the US election would have come as no surprise. And just now, when Britain and the US, two great democracies, two beacons of the free world, should stand for inclusion and sustainability, their people are being ripped apart. Fault lines lie beneath every continent on Earth, and fault lines fracture human society. In fact, our very origin as a species, going back hundreds of millennia, tracks with what's been called one of the geological wonders of the world. Another rift for you, Stefan. The East African rift. Friction between two enormous African plates created the monumental Great Rift Valley, where the earliest fossil evidence of human species has been discovered. From East Africa, this rift stretches to the Red Sea and then all the way on to the Middle East. The mountains, river valleys, and seas carved by these plates was first our birthplace and then the cradle of our earliest civilizations. This massive fault, our heartline, tells our story, the story of who we are as a sentient species, the story of our evolution as Homo sapiens. It's a story of how we've come together to form tribes, clans, communities, creating cultures and norms, only to subjugate the weak and demonize the other. It's a story of how we've been ingenious and curious, fueling the waves of innovation that have advanced human progress from the agricultural revolution to the industrial revolution to the era of high technology. Too often, though, that progress has come at the expense of all who've been exploited. It's a story of how we've held truth to be self-evident and marked rights as inalienable, only to discriminate against women, against the landless, against anyone who isn't educated and white. Everything humans have created that counts toward progress has been built on ground scored by fault lines, on imperfect and shifting foundations. Over the ages, human society's tectonic plates have groaned and buckled. We've experienced times of wrenching change as we are experiencing now, and yet these ruptures, like earthquakes, force us awake. At such times, good people rise to renounce human misery, to reject inequality. But times of such political and social upheaval demand more than heightened rhetoric. They demand new solutions. They call for solidarity and perseverance. They fuel ingenuity and social entrepreneurship. As we call forward our 2017 Skoll awardees, we celebrate their leadership and their organizations. We celebrate their supporters and their champions. And most of all, we celebrate the people they empower, whose power they unleash.